Hey, how's it going, Sasha?
Hi, Tony. Nice seeing you again. Another Wednesday.
Another Wednesday, another podcast.
Hello.
So,
Hello,
yeah,
Tony. Hello, everyone.
hello everyone. So last podcast, and I don't know for those that tuned in last time, we talked about at the tail end of that podcast, we talked about a documentary called Blackfish, and I said, "Hey, have you seen that documentary Blackfish?" And
Hmm.
there's a lot of correlations between that documentary and the dog training industry that some people aren't even aware of.
Mm.
And so, did you get a chance to watch that documentary?
Yep.
You did? All right.
Thanks. Yep. I did my homework. I promise. I
Good.
promise.
Well, I mean, I hope everybody else watched that documentary. If anybody else hasn't seen that documentary, Blackfish, absolutely free on YouTube. You can go to YouTube. I think probably at the end of this podcast, we'll have a link to that video in
Hmm.
the descriptions. But I gotta tell you, the first 4 minutes, just right into that documentary, the very first 4 minutes already was such an interesting telling sign. And I took down some notes because I thought, oh my gosh, I got to remember to bring this up, during the podcast. And
Hmm.
so from timestamp 2:35 to 4 minutes on that, former trainers, and you can hear the trainer, basically all the trainers say this throughout the documentary. Former trainers had zero experience working with marine mammals. SeaWorld had recruited employees using a recruiting video stating it takes years. So this is part of their employee videos when they work for SeaWorld. Because you can imagine that anybody that works for SeaWorld goes, I want to be one of the trainers. I don't want to work at the
Hmm.
concession stand. So they had this training video, and it stated it takes years to become a marine mammal trainer. But most of the trainers thought that they needed years of biology education, only to find out that SeaWorld would just teach regular civilian applicants on the job as they went along. They were more concerned with your charismatic personality and whether you could swim really well.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that I thought of right when I heard that is it's you would think they need all this biology education, that they needed to go to schools, they need to show that they have worked in marine biology, they had to go to a university. They just hired people off the streets that could swim well, looked good looking, and was very charismatic. And they said, okay, you're gonna swim with the whales, or we're gonna show you how to train the whales. And it sounds so damn similar to the dog training industry.
I guess like when you want to train any animal, the question becomes like this world today. I was in a dog, let's say, training business as a show dog handler. That's what you do. You try to have bring the dogs to a performance of their maximum ability to showcase their beauty, right? So that's kind of like something that you. So now there is a ways how you pull that out from animal. Will you kind of like make her be scared of you so they're going to show up, or you're going to blackmail them with the food they're going to show up, or they're going to just choose to show up and showcase themselves because they love you. All of those things are actually now I'm questioning back, and I'm looking back, and I'm going out to saying the same thing those marine people said, like, oh my god, what have I done? I didn't know better. And it's not an excuse, right? But
Yeah,
I actually.
there was a lot of that in that documentary. What I really liked about the documentary is a lot of those formal trainers never tried to create excuses for what they did. I just think it was really good to see how transparent they were about, hey, I don't do that. That was a mistake. And I realized it the second I was sucked into that SeaWorld circle. But one of the things about the qualifications,
Circus. See what circus.
yeah, exactly. But one of the interesting things about hearing that first 4 minutes of the documentary of, yeah, we didn't have any biology training. They just said, you're good looking, you're charismatic, you can swim well. We're going to put you in there. You're going to do the show. We'll show you how to train them. And a lot of people don't realize that there really is no state regulations requirements to be a trainer, right? And when I was in my mid 20s, I applied for a job at PetSmart. And I don't think a lot of people know the training, like the kind of training those PetSmart trainers get. So when I went to PetSmart training, I think that was maybe in the 90s, right? And I went in there to apply for a job, and I met a guy there. And he was actually a former Air Force trainer. He trained a lot of canines. And when he got out into civilian life, he just got a job as corporate for PetSmart. And so I was one of the people he interviewed. And it was so interesting because at that time I was overqualified. So he said, "Hey, you're overqualified, but I need your experience here." And I thought, well, then I could do it. He said, "But the only thing is you still have to go through the training, even though you know how to train dogs." And I'm like, "Oh, that's fine. I don't care." And I said, "How long is the training for?" And he said, 3 weeks. And I went,
better than the weekend.
Better than a week. 3 weeks. So I said, "What am I going to be doing?" He says, "You're just going to follow around one of the other kids," because they were just mainly teenagers or people that just were looking for part-time jobs to work at PetSmart. I knew I was more qualified, but I'm like, okay, well, I got to be humble. I got to see what I'm going to follow this trainer around. And at that time, they had applied animal behaviors create the curriculum and this course that these trainers would go through. And it was a fat binder. We had 2 fat binders. And I remember going through the binders and reading, who wrote it and who they were. And I looked back at the animal behaviors that wrote that. I'm like, oh, wow, this is good. There was a lot of knowledge in that book that was almost impossible to go through completely. But really, it was just following around another trainer for 3 weeks, seeing how they did it. And then they just gave you this paper certificate that you printed from the printer saying, now you're a PetSmart accredited trainer. Now, that was in the 90s. I know for a fact now that the PetSmart trainers, it's even faster than that. Same thing. But not only that, those 2 fat binders that I used to have a long time ago, I actually took them and I used to have them. They're now 2 thin booklets. So now the PetSmart, these 2 thin booklets, follow a trainer around for 3 weeks, and then they're a certified trainer. And it's really no different than what SeaWorld did to train their trainers. It was just people off the street with no real formal animal training at all. And then super common right now in the dog training industry is the fact that many people are maybe hiring knowledge assessed trainers. Okay, so you passed the test, but they may not have the actual experience. Of even working with.
You know what I wanted to ask you? Like in your perfect world, how the human-dog relationship looks like?
In my perfect world, I just see a symbiotic relationship. In my perfect world, how I would imagine, and this is stuff that I'm working towards with my dogs too, is a symbiotic relationship. But a lot of times, I don't think people understand what I mean by a symbiotic relationship. I mean, basically a dog that has a very well developed vocabulary, that they do understand a lot of what you're talking about, because dogs can recognize up to 6,000 words. And what I mean by symbiotic relationship is that, remember last podcast, I asked you, Sasha, why do you have a dog? Right?
Can I ask you, should I ask you the same question, Tony? Why do you have a wolf dog?
So my dogs I have for, number 1, to take care of my property. Number 2, to help me be aware when I have something going on my property, because I live out in the middle of nowhere. I'm on like 7 acres. And the other thing also too is, how people have service dogs? Anybody can have a service dog. You don't need to have a disability to have a dog that's a service to your life. So I'm kind of developing my dogs to be like service dogs, but they're not service dogs in the sense that I have a disability, and I'm not training them the same way a service dog today would train them. Mine is based on a lot of word association and having them help me through daily life, through daily tasks. Like, for example, one of the things that I'm working on is for my wolf dog Zamunda to go get my shoes for me and bring them back. And I want to teach her there's particular shoes that I'm looking for. So one of the things that she already does naturally is she already picks up things and brings them to me. Like, because she has a lot of excitement that needs to be contained, and she's kind of a mouthy wolf dog. So I find that whenever she comes to me, she's excited, she'll pick something up on her way and bring it to me to keep her mouth kind of occupied.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used to be like, oh no, don't grab my shoes. Oh no, don't do this. Oh no, that's expensive. And I used to get really reactive to that, which I think most owners would, or most pet parents would. But I started realizing my error, and I started realizing, bring it to me. Come over here. And she would bring it to me. And instead of pulling it out of her mouth, I'd say, that's my shoe. That's my shoe. You have my shoe. And I would kind of hold on to her. I wouldn't let her go anywhere. I would just pet her and love her and say, that's my shoe. And then she'd drop it. You dropped my shoe. You dropped my shoe. Take my shoe. And then she'd go, oh yeah, I'll take it. And I started teaching her that. And now I can say, you know, Zamunda, go get my shoe. And if it's nearby, she'll go and grab it and bring it to me. But I want to shape it and to go to my room and get my shoes. And then I want to eventually teach her which shoes I'm looking for. That is a service to me. And when she does something for me, I can see her eyes light up because it's not a, and I would never use it as a trick. Like if somebody wanted to say, well, can you show me a demonstration? I would do that demonstration, especially for educational reasons, but I don't use it to entertain my friends. Look what my girl can do. So go get me a shoe. Not like it's a dog trick. I use it because I want her to help me function through life. I don't have a disability, but sometimes I'm looking for other things, or sometimes I got to throw the trash out. And if she could already have my shoes ready, that would be great. And we can get going. And so what I mean by a symbiotic relationship is, if you've ever been watching your dishes to entertain my friends and had a little toddler come up to you and say, Mommy, what are you doing? And you go, dishes, sweetheart. And you'll notice that a lot of times children will go, can I help? Children always say, can I help? And one of the worst things you could ever do to a child is say, no, honey, Mommy can get it done faster. Or no, honey, you're just getting in the way. Why don't you go play with your sister and brother? It's the worst thing you could do. And watch the child and you'll see them go, oh, okay, I'll go play with my sister. It was much better to say, pull up a chair, climb up, grab the dishes, break a few, try your best. This is a good job. You know, clean it again later, but let them participate. And you see that they get the gratification of knowing that they can be a contributor to the family unit. Children love to contribute. But when you tell a child, no, I don't want your help, later on, when you do want their help, then you have to use bribery like allowance. Or you have to, oh, it's a pain in the butt to remind my kid to throw the garbage out, right? So you need to nurture that. And so I find that, to me, the ideal relationship with a dog is your own personal dog that you have a symbiotic relationship with that helps you through daily life. I mean, that's the whole reason why we had dogs to begin with: herding, protection, search and rescue. They all serve a functional purpose. So when somebody says, oh, do you just have a pet for enjoyment? You just like to pet them? You know, I don't feel that they're necessarily happy being pets. I think that they're much more happy to contribute. But the minute you make it about a dog trick and they realize it's a form of entertainment and they're earning a reward, it doesn't become a symbiotic relationship anymore. It becomes more like SeaWorld.
Oh my God! Now you're gonna kind of kill me for the things popped up in my mind out from what you just talked about, and because I was asking you like how the perfect world looks like in a human-dog relationship, and the moment when I ask you that, one image popped up in my mind, and I think we are maybe going towards extreme talk about. Like a blackfish, I almost said bluefish, because I really how to pronounce her surname. She said, like, in the end, I think it would be lovely if we stop this whole nation of pets altogether. Eventually, companion animals would be phased out, and we would return to more symbiotic relationship and enjoyment at the distance. If the people want toys, they should buy. Some objects, if they want companionship, they should seek if in their own species. What do you think about that statement? Is that too much, or we are talking about this all of these things we do now? We do because human-dog relationship got to that end in between human and dogs hurt each other because they don't know each other, or they do not
So
provide a nice and safe environment for them to interact. And the people like we are in need, especially in these transitioning mindset times when this leaving up the old knowledge about how force and alpha and dominance should be used in order to control someone, or how all of that can be can navigate, and the dogs can be, or any animal can be led to lead by choice, follow by choice, right? They're human companions. But how do you feel about that statement? That if we really want to be fair to an animal, we should enjoy them from distance. And if we need companion, we should do that with our own species.
what I feel about that statement is that it's contradictory, because they have also all over their website that they don't believe that.
No. I'm asking you. I asked the perfect world.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
don't think.
I already told you the perfect world what I feel how a dog should be. But the PETA, they say that they're not trying to tell people they can't have their companions at home, yet they do say that in part of their website. But that quote that you described there isn't a symbiotic relationship between animals. Symbiotic is where they're doing something for each other for a common goal of survival.
Isn't now I need to be really honest to that question. Don't you think that once the like a orca whale is put in that prison, how the way they interact with the trainers is for their own survival?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, bringing that up also brought up my second point, which I wanted to talk about, was that in 2010, a woman named Dawn Brenshaw had her arm was eaten and her head was scalped by a killer whale called Tilikum, which was that everybody kind of knows. And that was a friendly captive whale. And I think captivity creates abnormal behavior, especially if you're taking a wild animal and introducing them captivity. I understand that there's a domestication process with dogs, and I feel that that is a symbiotic relationship with dogs. I feel that we should have symbiotic relationship with dogs, which means that there's some task that you're helping each other through life over. As I mentioned before, herding dogs are helping farm ranchers. Search and rescue are helping find lost people in the woods that otherwise would die if they didn't have a dog that had a great nose. And those dogs love to work and do that symbiotic work. Do I feel that the average pet owner does that? So here's kind of what I feel bad about the average pet owner. I feel that the average pet owner has been brainwashed by a lot of trainers and brainwashed by a lot of the pet industry, because they don't have a symbiotic relationship with their dog, meaning that the dog never goes with them through life. A lot of those dogs are left home. A lot of those dogs are left in the backyard. A lot of those dogs are meant for self-amusement, but those dogs aren't necessarily living a symbiotic life. So I don't feel, if somebody asks me, and I don't judge other dog owners, because they don't have as much experience as maybe you and I have. But I know personally, I would never want to have a dog that I leave at home. I would never want to have a dog that I just think looks great with my purse. I would never want to have a dog that is just a conversation piece. They go, oh my gosh, you have a papillon? Mm-hmm. Oh, you have a Chinese crested? Uh-huh. Like
that was on me.
Never want to have a dog for my social media page.
That papillon was on me, right? Be honest.
Yeah, I want to know. No. I feel that an owner with a dog should have a symbiotic relationship with that dog. I think that dog should go everywhere with you. I think that dog should learn, hey, carry this pencil for me really quick because I have to grab a notebook. They love to be with people and they love to be helpful. They don't even need as a reward.
Is that symbiotic relationship if I ask my dog to bring me a pencil?
Yeah.
How come?
But it's not a symbiotic relationship if they're doing it for a reward and you're doing it as a conditioned trick.
Yeah. But the question here, like this moral question about why would I ask animal to bring me a pencil? If why I can't do it myself? Why do I need someone to do that for me?
For the because it's helpful for the same reason why you'd ask your son to go look for a pencil for you because you're on a phone call right now. Oh. And that you're drastic. For the same reason I might ask my wife, hey honey, I realized that I forgot one of my notes that I needed. I think I left it on the printer. Can you grab that for me real quick? Because it's helpful and it's a relationship with a common goal.
Just the question becomes like, do we need that from another species?
We need it from each other.
No, I get that, and that's where you have a son and you have a wife and you have someone that consciously have chosen to be in your life one way or the other, like a destiny.
That's why I don't train it.
No, yeah, that's what I get. But still, we have dogs by choice. We bought those dogs in our life, and then there this world leads. And I was like, when I asked, I don't know where this question came up from, and I would say like, and all of those people regret. They said like, also the hunters from the beginnings. He said I actually didn't know what I was doing by hunting those orcas, and that was a strategic way and move. Like, how do you navigate through those? And the question become like, when that was happening. When the SeaWorld and they were working with, all of that seems so normal, right? Maybe this pet life to us means now so normal. And how would we, if we would evolve in 200 years from now, would we see the world of human dog be like you describing, bringing you shoes and pencils and we live some symbiotic relationship? Or you see the world evolving in a way in which Peter is telling us it should go, like if a people want companionship, they should look for that in between the humans, and probably we would have less wars and misunderstandings than now.
I don't believe today's typical pet owner is living a symbiotic relationship with their dog now. I don't believe most people are. I feel that that's kind of something that you and me are doing differently. And I think that the industry that uses so much operant conditioning ends up conditioning the owners to think a certain way and have a different perspective, that they think they're having a symbiotic relationship with their dog, but they're actually really not.
What actually, if the relationship between two species is not symbiotic, which kind of relationship that ends up being?
It ends up being more about ownership. It ends up being more about
can one species own another one?
About something that you just want to have ownership of. But you remember, one of the things that my dad used to tell me, and I find this typical with a lot of dog owners too, is a lot of times, well, my dad was really strict and we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I didn't know why he would do things like this. But sometimes I would be really intrigued by a toy. Mm-hmm. And my dad knew my personality. I loved shiny things. He already knew, man, this boy's going to be an expensive boy. I already know. Like, he knew that from the very beginning. I like bougie stuff. I really do. But one of the things he always tell me is, why do you want that toy? I want that toy. I saw a commercial and my friends have that toy. I'm going to buy you that toy and it's just going to collect on the shelf with dust. Why should I buy you that toy if it's just going to collect on the shelf with dust? And I'd be like, no, it's not. It's not. But sure enough, my mom would pressure him to buy me that toy. And then after 2 weeks, I would have it on the shelf or the closet, buried under clothes, forgot all about it. And I think that a lot of the times I see that with a lot of dog owners too, where I had a friend for a while, like this was probably about 4 years ago. I had a friend that I was getting to know. And we knew each other probably going on 6 months because we was a new friendship. Mm-hmm. And then he mentioned his dog, and I didn't even know he had a dog.
Oh
my gosh, I didn't even know he had a dog. He goes, oh yeah. I'm like, well, where's he? How come you never bring him? Oh, he's just at home. And I'm like, that's typical of what most dog owners do is, oh, he's at home. Do you walk him? Yeah, but he's a butthead, so I leave him home. He's not good, or I leave him in the yard. And I find that a lot of people have dysfunctional relationships with their pets, but I don't see. And my goal is when I'm working with clients, which I'm sure your goal is too, is I try to change the perception of the owner or the pet parent to realize that they are not having a symbiotic relationship with their pet, and that's where the behavioral issues are coming from. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that, yeah, in SeaWorld, it's not a symbiotic relationship with the whale, especially how you captured it, how you claimed ownership of it, and then you're getting it to perform tricks, and it's living in a bathtub for 20 years, which you would think, well, they're getting plenty of exercise. It's the same stuff that people say about their backyard. How often do you walk your dog? Oh, 3 times a week. Is that really enough? Well, he's got a big yard, right? You brought up an interesting point about that one guy that was catching the killer whales, because it's another point that I had here about how he felt, well, how that was wrong. And one of the things he said, so his name was John Crow. I wrote it down. So John Crow was a Mariner, and this is in the Blackfish documentary for those that want to see it. I believe it's at the 2010 mark. Oh no, I forget what mark it is, but it's after that. But anyway, so John Crow was a Mariner that was paid to capture young orcas from their mothers.
Mm-hmm.
He was told to only take the little ones, and the reason for it was because the shipping cost was cheaper to transport the little ones. But what he said after that nearly brought me to tears. He said that the whole family of orcas, because what they would do is they create the circle net, and they would trap at the end of this net perimeter, but the parents were caught outside of the net perimeter. So he said that the whole family would stay and scream and communicate back and forth with the little ones that were in the middle. And once he realized what was happening, he said he lost it and started crying. But that didn't stop him from capturing the little ones, because he was given a job by SeaWorld. He also said that on occasion, some of the young ones would die hung up in the nets trying to get to their parents, and they died while being caught by the net. So what they would do is they would fill them with rocks and stick them right in front of their parents. And that was in the state of Washington. Once the state of Washington got wind that SeaWorld was doing that in their waters, then the state of Washington told them not to come back. But SeaWorld actually just ended up moving to other parts of the world doing the same thing. And I think that one of the nicest things about that documentary was there was so much participation from the people that were involved, and the apology and the emotion behind them realizing how wrong it was. They knew it was wrong at the time, right?
You think they knew it's wrong?
Well, John Crow said he started crying in the middle of him working. He said, I was working and I just broke down in tears. I realized what was going on, but everyone else was working and I had to work as well. And I was working because everyone else was working, and it was SeaWorld. And you'd be surprised how much peer pressure influences people. How much the masses or your boss changes the perception of what you should do, and you kind of become like a sheep, a cow. Like during the COVID times, your bosses told you have to take the shot or we're going to fire you. I got to keep working, and unfortunately, that's just the way society is. I have no doubt in my mind he knew it was wrong. In the documentary, he clearly was tearing up, and he said that he knew it didn't feel right. But you also can't judge him and hate him, because we've all been in a position where we may have felt that we did something we shouldn't have, but we just, whatever reason, we didn't follow through. But I think the most important part is realizing afterwards that you're evolving and that you can make up for your sins.
Yep, I completely agree. That is why we are doing all of this, I guess. And at least me, because I can relate to that and to this show world that I was serving, and especially when I'm telling you about, I was a groomer, so I knew tricks how to trick the judges and how to trick the things, and I was looking for the personality, not for the quality of the dog. And I would always choose the dog with the brain for show rather than the conformational qualities, knowing that I putting those dogs to be best in shows and, ribbons and points, those dogs would be chosen to be to be mothers and the fathers for the offspring that comes out from them, that I know. Actually, I knew, that there was an amazing story of me. I regret that today so much, but I'm also very openly talking about that, where I was having an amazing Italian toy poodle, a black toy poodle shown, right? And he actually had like five of these front teeth, incisives, right? Five. There should be six of them, right?
Right.
And that's a penalty, because that's something that the dog should have, because otherwise can kind of like make entire jaw be filled completely, built differently, and on the end the
You
kind
get
of
like a Sharpie and draw an extra tooth.
no, you know what I did actually? I was actually showing that dog that no one was, looking the tooth, because he was always groomed to perfection. He was performing wonderfully. He loved the ring. He had a mind for the ring, and I loved him. And we were always talking in front of the judges, and he was always wagging his tail. He was the best poodle ever, but for the pigeon show, not for the conformation show. And then, as I was winning so long, there was a lady that owned his little mate, and she came out, start telling the story that she owns his brother. He was his little mate, and she was showing him, and oftentimes we would find each other competing in the same ring. When I was beating her and she stayed on the second place, thinking like how this is possible, because she knew the secret. And then she was keeping it that for herself until she could. And then later on, she came out and she said how my little dog has 5 teeth, and she wanted to take that dog, but she didn't, because he has 5 teeth and the disqualification fault, and I should be ashamed of doing that. But at that time, that dog was winning so much that no judges want to confront anything that he did in the past, right? So they, by putting him down, they would say that all the judges that put him up were wrong. So no one wanted, that the career of the dog was already hyped up so much that no one wanted to do anything. And then I was keep showing him, because their owners just wanted him out, and I did that. And then at one day, I enter to some very famous German judge that I loved a lot, and he loved me a lot, and I was mainly only winning, also winning under him a lot. And when I was showing him this dog, he said, "It came to my attention that your puppy, actually, this dog has five incisives, like 5 teeth in his upper jaw." And I said, "No, there are rumors. When you are winning a lot, it's just kind of like, that's what the people do. They try to put you down somehow." And I said, "On the end, you can always check." And he said, "Yeah, you're right." And then I opened the mouth of this little dog, and I took my finger and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "You're right. There is no problem." But what I did is I tickled 1, 2, 2 times. So I said like, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is 6. So I was able to use my charm, the dog's charm, the dog charisma, our relationship, to trick people in front of their eye. And like now I'm
sorry? Yeah. Just like at SeaWorld. They all look like they're having fun. They all look like there's a great relationship between them and the animal. It's an illusion. It's an illusion.
That dog had like maybe 200 puppies offspring with the different bitches over his lifetime. He's not with us anymore. And I did it.
Yeah.
I did it, and I do feel guilty because of that. And guilt oftentimes kind of like comes back. But, I think when I talk about that publicly live, I'm exposing the world as well of the show dog people, because, and show world, the show dog pigeon world, right? Kind of like, is that really for the benefit of the dog, or is just for the beauty of the presented dog? And how many times I did myself, and I know my colleagues did the same thing. And we still start to try to preserve that conformation ring as something that's valuable in a sense of creating pre-zygote selection for the greater preservation of the breeds.
Yeah. Well,
So
here's a really important thing, right? And I'm going to bring this up because even though you feel guilty for what you've done in the past, and I feel guilty for a lot of the things that I've done in the past, which is the reason why I'm evolving and you're evolving. I mean, I used to be an e-collar trainer. I used to do clicker training. But if everyone in this podcast audience is watching, they're all going to feel guilty right after I read this. So they'll all be in the same boat as you. So this was about into that documentary. And once again, I would suggest everybody watch it. In timestamp 1536 to 18, okay, Steve Huxter, which was the former director of SeaWorld, stated, see here, that the killer whales were taught with positive reinforcement. Okay, that's describing probably 90% of the people watching this video with dogs, because everyone's using positive reinforcement by keeping them hungry and withholding food for not performing properly, which caused them to go into psychosis. So stop with the killer whale and just start looking at the dog community. Positive reinforcement was one of them, is 90% of what people are using in the dog training community. And this person's saying they were taught with positive reinforcement by keeping them hungry. How many times do you go to a clicker training class and the first thing that trainer says is, make sure you don't feed them till right before class. As a matter of fact, you might want to not feed them for the day so they can perform. So you're keeping them hungry and withholding food for not performing properly. One of the things that I always do when I'm in a seminar, especially when I have people that may feel that they understand operant conditioning really well, first thing I say is, how many people here believe in positive reinforcement? I mean, positive reinforcement has to be, I mean, even petting your dog and kissing your dog can be positive reinforcement, and everybody raises their hands because that's what we have to do. We have to do positive reinforcement. And then I say, how many people, let me ask you this question. I say, in positive reinforcement, do they use punishment? And right away, the whole audience goes, no. And I have a chairs full of positive reinforcement trainers. No, we do not use punishment. Well, what do you think withholding a reward when he doesn't sit right is? You're basically keeping them hungry. And if you ever work with a positive reinforcement trainer or clicker trainer, and they come to help you with your behavioral case, and they realize your dog has zero food drive, the first thing they're going to tell you is, start holding back his food to make him hungry or make him earn his food. And if he doesn't do what you want, then pull your food away. And that is called negative punishment. So when you look at a trainer that uses, let's say, traditional training like a pinch collar, or a trainer that uses an e-collar, they're not using negative punishment. That's what some people think. A remote collar trainer, or maybe even a show handler, they may put tension on the collar, and then when the dog sits, the tension is released. That's called negative reinforcement. It means that the dog's behavior is taking away a discomfort. Like you're the sun's hitting your eyes, you're putting glasses on to take away the discomfort. The chances of you bringing your sunglasses everywhere are going to be pretty good because you've learned, hey, if the sun comes out, I can take away the discomfort. So we're reinforcing the behavior of you wearing sunglasses. But positive reinforcement trainers, they use what's called negative punishment. If you don't do it right, then you don't get the cookie, right? And they're saying right here, which they've had animal behaviors working at SeaWorld. They had them help with that curriculum. He clearly said it right here. Positive reinforcement and withholding rude for not performing correctly started to cause psychosis. So rest assured, it's not just you anymore that has to self-reflect on what you did in the past. It's not just me anymore that has to self-reflect on what I did in the past, because we have stopped doing that by self-educating ourselves and researching. But everyone watching this podcast is guilty of what this guy just said with their dogs right now.
And it's a great if we can inspire with this podcast responsibility out from that guilt, because I think like what need to happen with that guilt is actually allowing ourselves to, yes, we were drawn in this madness of mainstream positive reinforcement training recommendations, right? But I understand now what I'm doing by withholding the food and actually turning that into negative negative stimulants, right?
Yeah. So here's the crazy thing is, how did dogs trainers and how did dog parents get sucked into this? So to help the doggy parents out there, okay, because I know now doggy parents are probably going, oh, so we're training our dogs like SeaWorld, and the professionals at SeaWorld said that this style of training causes psychosis. Oh my gosh, I feel bad. Then why is it being taught to us? Why are people encouraging us to do clicker training classes and positive reinforcement classes? I'm going to now alleviate their stress, because now they're wondering how they got caught up in that. So clicker training was popularized by a trainer by the name of Karen Pryor. Karen Pryor is one of the pilot ships that popularized positive reinforcement and clicker training. She's the one that came up with that. But the interesting thing is she came out of nowhere. She had zero dog experience. She came in with this hypothesis of clicker training and marker training. She met another trainer that said, holy crap, that's genius. He promoted her. It created a whole movement. Ask me, Sasha, where Karen Pryor came from. Where did she used to work? Ask me.
Where Karen Pryor came from, and what did she used to work for? Who did she work with? Who did she used to work for?
She used to work for SeaWorld.
SeaWorld.
Karen Pryor came from SeaWorld. So everyone is using the same exact method that this gentleman just said causes killer whales psychosis, by using food to perform and withholding food for not performing, causing psychosis. Karen Pryor has taken that. And that is the reason why it's so popular in the dog training industry. That happened Karen Pryor worked for SeaWorld in the 70s. As a matter of fact, I have proof, right? Quote your sources.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at that documentary, Blackfish, one more time, towards the middle and the end, they start to show how often killer whales hurt trainers. There's about 70 accounts of captive killer whales hurting or killing a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And they show a incident report. They just flash it on the screen. When you watch the documentary and you see the incident report, pause it, and look at the incident report, and you'll see Karen Pryor's name on it.
Like a one that was hurt by the animal?
No, one that made a statement to the press about people being hurt by the killer whales. And you can see, because she was an employee of SeaWorld.
Mm.
Okay, so now that everyone knows a bit more, so here's the thing. When you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. That's something that a lot of teachers say. If you don't learn your history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem, I think, with a lot of the training industry is they don't teach history.
Yeah, because history is boring. Who
but
cares about history? We don't need to know that.
You don't even train the same way right now. If you actually went, I'm going to study the history of training, you would wake up and realize, wait a second, then why are we doing this right now if it's been done before with catastrophic, result, right? So right then and there, so that was between the timestamp 1536 and 1800, where the former director of SeaWorld stated that was their program, was keeping them hungry, using food for performance, withholding the food if they performed incorrectly. Hello, that's dog training. And that became popularized by Karen Pryor in the 80s, who took what they did at SeaWorld and brought it to the dog training world. So everybody has a right to feel some kind of way as you and I do. But now that I've given that information, what are they going to do with that information now?
Probably be angry at you.
No.
One's angry at me because usually because I need to tell you that people oftentimes resist changes, especially when they are presented with such a nice explanation as you did. Because now we would expect that everyone would love to hear the new strategy and to learn about how this all can be changed and what should we do here and there. And then you come to the point, then the programs of this kind of relationship with the dogs require real understanding of the animal and their needs, their physiological and needs of the different species. How do you inspire dog to the best possible control is actually self-control. So if you can inspire dog to self-control itself and to provide the dog environment in which they willingly choose to behave as we want or we wish, desire, so to provide to desirable and acceptable behavior, there is a path to that, but that also requires a lot of discipline. And it's nothing to do with the dogs. It's everything. If we want to control our dogs, we need to control ourselves. And we need to cut the cords with that emotional entanglements of my babies and my furry friends and furry babies and the replacement of my whatever is missing in my life with another species, because you are right. It doesn't become a symbiotic. You were very kind when you said it's ownership. I think actually it's parasitism. The humans humans are emotional parasites over their dogs. And you are very kind when you are saying it's only ownership and the humans are only species on this planet that owns the other species, that actually makes them parasites, living off the emotional life and life actually exploiting the life of the dogs for their own gains, emotional gains.
So at the end of this podcast,
or the beginning.
At the end of this podcast, we will tell people what they can do, because we don't want to tell them what's wrong with this industry and then not give any light at the end of the tunnel of where they can go. Well, they can go to you or me, but at the end, we'll explain kind of what we really do that's different than the dog training industry. But before we go there, I want to remind people that are watching this to stay till the end and watch the full podcast in order to get that information. But there was one more thing that gives so much synchronization to what's going on with the dog training industry that's happened to SeaWorld. Listen to this, because this was a really good one too. So in 1991, a trainer, her name was Kelty Byrne, worked at Sealand of the Pacific, which was like SeaWorld that was, I believe, in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. She was taken under by one of the killer whales and was killed. And that organization covered it up and said it was an accidental drowning. Okay. Now, Steve Huxter, which was the former director of SeaWorld, he stated later, because when they're doing this and he's the director of SeaWorld, he's learning from the behaviors, what happened, what's going on. I mean, they're not just saying, oops. I can only imagine SeaWorld saying, we need to call an expert to tell us what happened, why it happened. The trainers don't know. There's civilians that are just being trained for animal training for entertainment. But here's what he said. Steve Huxter stated that he learned they were overly stimulated by the performance, which means that they were overexcited, which caused their behavioral issues, and that the behavior said that they were most likely going to repeat it. Listen to this carefully. Steve Huxter stated he learned they were overly stimulated by the performance, overexcited. What do people do when they say, Fido, sit? I'll sit, I'll down, I'll sit. Or do you want the paw? Or you want the paw? You want the other paw? No, you want to lay down. What do you want me to do? Just say it and I'll do it. That caused their behavioral issues and they were more likely to repeat it. That pretty much describes positive reinforcement.
But Pavlov explained that, like in the middle of on the end of the last century, it's kind of like what we are so kind of like surprised. You're right. You start two episodes ago, you was talking about exactly this, right? It's just we are now talking about the consequences of that knowledge that the Pavlov described in his own words. That was a conclusion of the experiment. You cannot use it. And if you want to use it, you need to always increase the stimulus. Otherwise, it won't work. Yeah. The brain is resisting it. The physiology is resisting it.
Also, being in a constant state of anticipation is just a mild form of anxiety, and that anxiety can get worse.
Yeah, and that because
it looks happy. They're wagging their tail. They're happy, right?
Yeah, but also when you are watching wolves killing and putting down the prey, all of them are wagging the tails.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is something in the documentary that made me think of you.
Oh.
Okay. Because you preach this. I hear you preach it because you really do a lot of scientific research. You're really talking about them being sentient beings. And when I saw this in the documentary, I said, oh my gosh, I wonder if Sasha digested this when he heard this, when he watched the documentary.
Tell me.
So in a movie called Orca, and this is, I'm just quoting from the actual
Blackfish
documentary. That's why I said, why would people be upset with me? I'm not actually saying any of this. This is not my original thought.
Kill the messenger. Kill the messenger. No, it's too late to explain.
All right. Anyway, in a movie called Orca, directed by Michael Anderson in 1977, stated that the orca's intelligence may be even superior to man's. Mm-hmm. As parents, they are exemplary, better than many human beings. And like human beings, they have a profound instinct for vengeance. Now, Lori Marino, she's a neuroscientist that's in that documentary at timestamp 2540. And here's what she says, and this made me think of you. She says that after brain scans of the orca brain, it just screams out intelligence and awareness. Their brain, they said they took a look at this tremendous brain and put it in a magnetic resonance imaging scanner. She said, what we found was astounding. A part of their brain has extended right to the Olympics, the Olympic system. Processes these animals, and that's basically where all the emotion lives, right? So it's highly elaborated emotional. That means that killer whales have a highly elaborated emotional lives, and this extension the human brain doesn't have. We have an emotional cognition and limbic system, but this extension that the killer whales have, they've only seen it in this and in other marine mammals, but not in humans. These animals have highly elaborated emotional lives. It's becoming clear that dolphins and whales have a sense of self-sense, of social bonding, that they take to a whole other level, much stronger, more complex than other mammals, including humans.
Yeah, I remember that part, yes. And I remember they showing that brain when they were putting it in the scans and everything. It's kind of like one, and it wondered. I was also wondering, like, and the only reason why they are using their potentials, and the humans today are we are not living up to our full potential, right? Because of the conformity. Like everything is conform. That's
why I say people shouldn't be guilty. Whatever I said that makes somebody feel guilty, don't feel guilty. And don't feel like you have to defend yourself or even say, oh, I got to talk against this because it makes me feel guilty and we love positive reinforcement. I'm letting you guys know that the industry has conditioned you. So you're conditioned. That's the reason why it's happening.
But as a sentient being and as a babies, we need to be conditioned anyhow. Like that's the way our brain operates. We are conditioned to the moment we are born. Just the question becomes like, who is conditioning us? If we I don't know. Are you familiar with the scientists that do you know who Dr. Yuval Harari is? He wrote the *Sapiens*.
No.
He wrote the book *Sapiens*, and later on he wrote the book *Homo Deus*. He's talking about actually free will in the humans. And he said like free will actually, if exist at all, it is not something that we get for granted. We need to fight for it very, very hard. And he said, like, free will in our life exists maybe up to 1%. So if I'm thinking that by going to buy something in the shop, expressing my free will by buying Mac over PC or buying Nike over Adidas or something like that is expression of my free will, is actually nothing to do with it. We are conditioned from the day we are born, like by parents, by school, by society, by friends, by media, by propaganda, by politicians, by everything. We know what we are for and what we are against, and then someone else is against what we are for and for something we are against. And all of that is conditioning. Just the question you are talking, you are very much in this latent learning, right, where you are learning from something you are not aware you are learning actually from, right? It's happening around you, and you're learning because you're exposed to those, not you, the people or the dogs.
Yeah, you're learning through life experience.
Yeah, but you are kind of like the circumstances are there, and now you are observing the circumstances. As we had our little doggy, our Henny, now that we moved in a house with the 2 dogs, and now we are 3. So there is Rocky, there is Gina, and there is little Henny. And because there is a big pool in a yard, like in a how you say that? In the backyard is a pool, right? And Gina was a little dog that her owner didn't know, will she swim and can she survive? Is she accidentally jump in the pool? So the little door that, the door that gets you, dog door. She trained only a big dog, only Rocky is trained to go through that door, right? And Gina, no matter for how long, she's like 10 years in that house, she never learned to go across that door, right? And here is Henny, our little papillon that joined the pack like maybe 2 months ago, right? He uses a dog door like never. He was never told by anyone to use a dog door. He just saw it from another dog using it. And now that he's out there, I needed to show him how to use a pool if he accidentally end up in a pool. So yeah, I was, putting him in a pool to swim, showing him where are the stairs, how to come out, how to do, and repeat the circle around if he accidentally find himself inside a pool. But what I wanted to say here, the whole point is, do you know the Dr. Watson experiment he wrote a wonderful book called Animal Education, talks about the conditioning as well, how the food conditions, how the...
I'm gonna look back at this podcast and look up those books. But whatever you're mentioning that you're grabbing that research from, make sure to put that where you can get that book on this description.
Okay, that is his PhD from, I don't know, mid 19th century or something like that, and one of his little early works. And later he's very famous for his very abusive experiment called Little Albert experiment. I don't know, are you familiar with that? Little Albert.
Tell me.
So he was actually inspired by the Pavlov experiment, and he said like he should try that with a baby. And he said like there is a baby that he borrowed from his girlfriend, and a lot of time, and no, she was not a girlfriend, she was a nurse at the hospital where he worked. And later on, the critics of his experiment, they said that actually the little Albert was his child, that he had it with that lady, and that is why she agreed to borrow little Albert for the experiment. And what happened there is that he was just, observing the little Albert, like he was like maybe 6 to 9 months baby, not a big baby, like not a grown up child or something like that, baby.
Wait, and he was talking about? What animal is this?
A human.
Oh, it was a human. Oh,
a baby, human baby. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
A baby called Albert. Yeah. And he was observing the baby's behavior and showing the baby like a little mouse, white rat, monkey, dog, anything like any kind of animal.
Is this when he went behind the baby with a loud pan and went bam?
Yes.
And he did it with a mouse, and now it's scared of monkeys.
Yes. So that he did. And you know what? Funny story. No, it's not a funny story. It's actually a very sad story. That mom got scared for the baby's life because the baby suddenly developed an anxiety of seeing white color. So because of that, so the first part of the experiment was the baby introduced with the object, like I said, like not object, like animals, like stuffed animals, live animals, and baby was just curious, coming there, seeing them, petting them, kind of like observing the animals. The next portion of the experiment was exactly what you said. When showed to the animal, the loud noise was created behind the curtains, what made actually the baby connect now that noise with an animal, starting to develop entirely fearful and anxious behavior any single time the baby saw anything. And the most funny thing was that Albert.
When you think about it, it's like a form of PTSD.
Yeah, but then the baby died. I'm sorry. The mom ran away with baby, and when the baby was like 9-10 years old, died of hydrocephalus. The baby was completely like normal, like a healthy baby. That after undergoing through this experiment, actually got such a brain damage that the critics of the experiment says was directly caused by this part of the study conducted by
I think there's later on too, and I'm sorry because I do know of the study. I haven't read it thoroughly, so I'm going to admit that I haven't read it thoroughly, but I will after discussing this with you. But and I don't know if you've heard what I'm about to say. But when I did hear that study, I heard that what he said was that the study was technically somewhat incomplete because they were supposed to reverse the damage, and that would have elevated the study. But the woman got so upset that this baby was scared during the study that she didn't want to come back in order for him to undo any long-lasting effects.
Yes, that's what he said. And after before he conducted that experiment, just after he did his research and said about animal behavior, and then actually learning about how the brain changes its physiology as we learn certain things or expose ourselves to a certain learning patterns. And I just pull up his quote, and he said, like, give me a dozen healthy infants, well formed, and in my own specific world, to bring them to raise them, I'll guarantee to take any at random and train him to become any type of specialty I might select. A doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant, chef, and yes, even beggar man and the thief, regardless of his talents, tendencies, abilities, vocations, race, and his ancestries. And he said, like, that's how human brain is capable of being impacted by the outside world, primarily by the family, by the parents, by the education system, by the friends, family, and whoever we expose ourselves to, we actually become. And and that's what when you was telling that latent learning was so much in me, kind of like when you are learning by observing, and oftentimes we can put that in use when you are not manipulating, but when you are creating a circumstances which will allow dog or a human or a child to learn without knowing it's taught, right? Without knowing it's learning.
Basically, it's controlling and managing the environment so the animal can learn freely and it's safe to make mistakes.
There you go. But the very important point of exactly that way of possibility to learn, we can also use the same concept and learn without creating without creating any environment. The same concept can be used to learn negative traits, and you have a negative impact on us, because that's what exactly you said. I can create an environment in which latent learning could lead to forming a wonderful character of the human or animal.
It could go both ways. It could latently go a good way or latently go a bad way.
There you go.
interesting what you're saying is a lot of the times I like to describe homeless dogs as latent learners, because especially when you're dealing with areas like Mexico or Greece, they have wild dogs that know how to cross streets, that know to wait for the traffic to slow down, that have specific rounds and know how to get fed and visit the city butchers. And they're very interesting that, wow, they're super latent, but there are dogs that are latent that are thieves.
Yeah.
Right. I've seen a funny news video where they have on camera a husky that left its owner's yard, so it was loose in the city, walked right into a grocery store and left with a bone. Left with meat, left with a bone. Thief. But it did that regularly. And so they were able to catch the husky and find out who the owner was. That's all learning. It may not be what we want, though, but it's learning from your environment.
Yeah, but that's what the kids can learn from the environment, not what the parents are teaching them, but what they see it's happening at home. That's a little learning too, right?
Yeah, playing car theft auto is also well. Here's something interesting. I was explaining to a client that we were working with a dog that had a lot of intensity and anxiety, and she was playing a lot of fetch with her dog. It was very neurotic over the ball, right? And so it started latently bleeding over to other things that she didn't want. Mm-hmm. Chasing fast-moving objects, chasing a kid on a skateboard. If it moved fast, it grabbed that dog's attention. And she didn't understand the concept of, we got to stop playing with these toys. We got to stop playing fetch. She just didn't get it. And I tried to explain to her, it's mock hunting. It's pretending to hunt. But now it's carrying over to really chasing kids on bikes. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I explained to her was that when I was younger, my parents did something very interesting that I don't think a lot of parents do. Mm-hmm. But my father was a Marine. And so I wanted to be in the Marines. I wanted to be in the Army. I wanted to be a cop little. And he kind of, nurtured that. I mean, I kind of looked up to him. I wanted to be like him. And me and my friends were out playing with these plastic guns. Now, right now, I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm 50 years old. When I was younger, when I was like maybe 8 or 10, the toy guns did not look anything like the toy guns you see today. Fluorescent orange, Nerf guns, water gun. We didn't have that when I was a kid in the 80s. Our toy guns that we got from Toys R Us, they looked like a legitimate Beretta. They looked like they looked real. They just squirt water. And I wanted so badly to shoot with my friends in the neighborhood. Oh. And, I wanted one. And my mom always said, I'm not buying you a toy gun. I'm not buying you a toy gun. I'm not buying you a toy gun. And I would get so upset. So I ended up getting a toy gun. Let me tell you this interesting story. Mm-hmm. But I actually stopped playing with toy guns on my choice. My choice. So my father bought me a toy gun. It looked real. And he said, I'm going to buy you this toy gun because I know why you want it. And I said, yeah. He says, you're probably going to one day get a real gun, yeah? I said, yeah. And he goes, all right, that's good. That's why I got you a toy gun, because I know you're going to want a real one. I went, really? And he goes, uh-huh. But let me teach you how to play with your toy gun. If you don't know how to play with a toy gun, then you can't go play with it with your friends. So if I catch you not following the rules with this toy gun, you can't have it anymore. What are the rules? Number one, when you have the toy gun, you never put your finger on the trigger. Your finger always is off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. That's real gun training. You never go to a firing range and have your finger on the trigger. That's how accidents happen. You always have. He taught me how to play with a toy gun safely. When you're talking to friends, if I see out the window and I see your hand on the trigger, I'm taking the gun away. Also, when I see with your friends, that gun needs to be pointing down all the time. I do not want you pointing it to your friends. I don't want you talking with the gun with your hand. It's always pointing down. I said, okay, all right. Another thing, you never pointed at your friends. You never pointed at a person. If you want to shoot cans with it, shoot cans with it. And if you're really good at it, I might even buy you a BB gun when you're a teenager. Really? But you got to show me that you're responsible with that toy gun. You know what happened with that toy gun? I threw it away because it's boring to have.
Boring to have, I guess. I was waiting for that end. I guess.
As a matter of fact, Sasha, I know how to shoot a gun because I go with some friends sometimes, but I don't even own a gun right now.
Mm.
And it's not because I'm against guns or I'm political or I don't believe in NRA. Literally, it's just my choice. I just don't want a gun because I just
because you have like a 4 wolf dogs, boy. Like what the heck you need a gun for? Is it 4 or 3? I'm sorry.
Yeah, but the point is my dad had an interesting way of what he was going to do with me. My mom didn't like that I got a toy gun, but whatever he did, he didn't tell me not to ever have a gun. He never told me I couldn't have a toy gun. He just gave me the choice. If you want it, this is how you have to behave around it. And later my choice was I didn't even want it anymore. I didn't even want it anymore. So here's something else that I wanted to point out as well. And this is something that I know that you understand because you kind of explained it to me last podcast. And it was interesting because in the last podcast, I was talking about animal rescues, going to Mexico, taking those street dogs just to fill up their shelters to adopt out. And when I rewatched the podcast, I felt that I misunderstood you, and I wanted to address that right now. Whereas where you kind of said, yeah, I mean, it's like taking a wild animal and taking it out of nature and thinking you can have it in a house. And in that podcast, I felt that you misunderstood me because they're domestic dogs. But then I realized, no, they're not. They're wild dogs. They're street dogs. They're not pets.
Really
so
dogs.
It's like grabbing a wild animal, like a coyote, and putting it into your house. Yep. So the animal shelters are getting feral dogs that can survive, that are wild, that know how to coexist with people in the city. They're not bothering any of the city, and they're taking these animals out of their natural environment because they're dogs and not a coyote, and thinking they can adopt them out. And then those people that adopt out realize, holy crap, what's wrong with this dog? It is a wild dog. It's not a domestic. It's not like it's not going through the domestic process. I mean, it's domesticated, but it's not being raised by people. So you really do have a wild dog. So when you said that, that's where it started realizing that, man, I wish I had brought it up during that last podcast, but the damage of captivity. So we're getting these killer whale problems. We're getting them killing the trainers, and it's because they're in this captivity in a small pool. So in a sense, we shouldn't be doing that to like res dogs by grabbing them or going to Mexico and then adopting them out in the US, which is sadly happening. But it also made sense to me that a lot of these behavioral issues we're having are captivity issues. Meaning that I'm getting dogs with behavioral issues. Okay, what do you do with your dog? Do you take your dog to work? No, my dog doesn't go to work. What do you do on the weekends? Well, we had the fairgrounds, but I can't bring my dog everywhere because he's naughty. Okay, so your dog's at home all the time. Remind me what happened to the humans, what happened to their mental illness when COVID-19 happened and we were told we couldn't leave the house. Do you remember what happened? We had a hike in suicide rates.
Mm. I completely agree, but also when I talk to my clients, don't take a dog that's not ready to the walk, because they're gonna kind of like make them follow you, and then you can take them wherever you want. So, but that homework need to be done prior you incorporate dog into the world. It's also putting yourself and the dog. Actually, what we need to do is put ourselves in the shoes of the dog. And look perspective. And if we really want to learn about the dogs, where do we go? And as I told always, as I'm telling every single time when I have any seminar, no matter on what level, is it a behavior, nutrition, or cold care, whatever, out from this my 360 pet care, expertise, I can say, it's coming out. is in order to provide someone, you first need to understand who they are. Who is dog? What is a dog as a species? What is a dog with their needs? What the dog need beyond the humans? So if there wouldn't be humans, would the dog exist at all? And now how much do we impact with our dog's life? With our beliefs, because you're going to do to your dog whatever you believe it's right, no matter how that turns out to be, right? And that's why the question becomes like why we have such a high spike in the cancers and all kind of wrong systemic diseases that have a long lasting possibility to be prevented if we would make right choices on time by knowing and listening to first, let's say humans, like listening to our body, listening to our thoughts, listening to our hearts. Stress can be prevented, organ failures can be prevented, but there is that deep inner sense of need of sacrifice, even of our own life for, I don't know, something greater that comes from within us that we cannot resist. And then we make all of these bad choices through our life: who to marry, where to work, what to do, whom to say yes, whom to say no. When I learned about myself, when I really met myself, I think like in my life I started to say more no than yeses. I started to finally say no. If I cannot be 120% in it, I wouldn't commit to it. But then oftentimes I would see how much other people would be 20% in and still say yes. So if we bring that mindset, and now we have a creature that depends on us, like a little dog, completely dependable on our choices. So we made choices for our dogs, as do we made the choices for our kids. As your father can teach you, could take a gun to be kind of like, oh, I want a gun, I want a gun, I want a gun, like you have his as a role model, and then he brings you a gun, and the story of your life might turn completely differently, right?
Yeah.
So your life was in his hands. And sometimes we need to resist what the kids want us to do and what kids wants us to give them, because that might be hurting them. Like if I want to give my little daughter or a son, if they want to chocolate and ice cream, and if you ask kids what they want to eat for the breakfast, dinner, lunch, they would have chocolate for the breakfast, ice cream for the lunch, and then more chocolate and ice cream for the dinner. And if you listen to their wishes and needs, they're going to end up being obese and diabetic. So that's kind of, and that's where I think when you were telling like how killer whales are so embedded in a foundational, grounded in that fundamental structure of the community called family. And the pack of the wolves is grounded in the same rule. But in every single family, in every single pack, in every single structure that binds individuals together, the structure is of the most importance. It's not that everyone is doing what they want or what they please.
So in that documentary, it's so interesting because one of the things that we're mentioning in that documentary was that when they were putting the killer whales together, they had a social hierarchy they had to work out. And there were scrapes on each other.
Yeah, you hear that.
There was communication between the two. And some didn't get along with others. So the SeaWorld had to kind of create these musical chairs and, well, these ones can be together with these ones. Don't let these two together. So they're controlling and managing like an owner that has inter-pack aggression in their house and only one dog can be out at the same time, right? And one of the things that has such a synchronicity to in the canine world is David Meck, who's a wolf dog biologist, had the same experience when he was studying wolves, that we ended up using that study to work with dogs. But his study was flawed because when he was studying the wolves, he was studying them in captivity.
Oh, you cannot.
Peaceful social hierarchy status. But then he realized that in wildlife biology, when you're looking at wolves in their natural habitat, not in a captive situation, that they don't do that because they're brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers. that's a family unit, not a captive
Group.
situation. Same thing happens in prison, right? Let's just imagine I did something wrong. Okay, I got to do the time. I go into jail. Oh, it's Uncle Bob. Oh, it's Grandma Martha. I'm going to go to jail and probably get along with well, right? But in jail, what happens in jail? No one's family. And so there's a social hierarchy in the prison system. Same exact thing. There's so many synchronicities between us and animals that people aren't just aware of.
Yep. And that's where the magic starts, or the problem starts exactly at that point, because it's our responsibility to know what is good for my dog. And the only way to know that is to answer the question, who is a dog? And if I would ask you, like, who is a dog and what is a dog, I don't think so we can have an entire different podcast about raising only that simple question. Because when the Maslow was creating that hierarchy pyramid, was like Maslow's pyramid of needs, where he said every single one first, and he was struggling with first he said the food, and then in social interaction, and he was growing that pyramid up. And by the end of his like professional life, he was telling, like, well, I'm not quite sure which is more the fundamental need of the humans, a belonging or the food. Can I survive with the food without belonging? And will I eat if I do not belong? Or am I gonna starve myself to death out of depression or whatever might causing me not to eat and not to fulfill my physiological need, draining my physiology and causing my death if I do not belong. So he said, like, if I don't belong to some group or some, even the monks that are separating themselves from the world belong to a god, and they have that. They have church with a God, and they created a unity with a God, and they do belong. So that regardless of what and who and how many that group that we do belong is numbered, the feeling of belonging is very important for the humans to thrive. And that's the same thing, like, do we really know what our dogs' needs are in order to provide them, in order for them to thrive long happy and healthy life?
Yeah, and training them like SeaWorld animals and keep them and not doing things like, I don't know if the killer whales could go on vacation and go places, but I think they would have been happier if they had more room to go do things. So here's another thing also that I found as a synchronicity between that documentary and the industry of dogs and pets is misinformation. So listen to this. This was
now you're entering the world. Now you're in the place of conspiracy theories, misinformations of who by who.
I have a friend of mine that also tells me that I watch too many conspiracy theories and it's affecting how I work with animals.
There you go. Here you go.
Look at this. In that documentary, and I believe probably it still is the same right now, if you go to SeaWorld where they give you the education about them, one of the things that they say is that the lifespan of a killer whale is anywhere between 25 and 35 years, a little bit longer in captivity because we have veterinarian services, we have healthcare for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is 100% false. Killer whales in the wild can live up to 99 years old.
Oh my God.
So what teaching at SeaWorld, I almost feel like they just want to provide that misinformation so people think, oh, the killer whales live to 25 to 35 years old. That's normal. That's what they would live. They've lived longer here than out there. That's totally not true. The other misinformation is collapse of the dorsal fin. They say, oh, why is the dorsal fin flopped over? Oh, 25% of killer whales in the wild have that. Not true. 1%. 1%. The aggression they get in the pods in the aquariums, there's aggression there because of they're not really family, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, and there's been 70 killer whale accidents already.
Oh my God. And are they like shutting them off, or is that gone, or it's gonna be gone, or what's going on?
rules. So basically, they still have SeaWorld. They're still keeping the captive. They're still keeping captive type of orcas in their aquariums. I feel that the aquariums are larger. It just means it's a larger yard. Last podcast, you mentioned another killer whale that they were about to set free, and then it died before it was set free.
Mm.
I looked into that a bit more, and I found out that they weren't going to set it free. What they were giving it was a larger area in an ocean surrounded by a net to give it a larger area. So I feel that could have helped it psychologically. It didn't have to correspond with other orcas that it had no idea of the culture. But it's still not free. It's
but they said like that was one of the, that was a stage, because they wanted to net it first, just in case the family that she do belong to is not there anymore, that they cannot know. And then they will kind of net her, so she just kind of doesn't get killed.
Yeah, they were going to keep her in a sanctuary, and that was what the sanctuary was that netting.
$200 million for that.
I know we're going a little bit over probably our podcast, but I wanted to read kind of like a conclusion, just a little bit of kind of what we learned here. And this article that I have that I'll read to you, I already sent you guys a link, so it could be put on the bottom of the podcast so other people can get to the article if they want to read it. But it says here, and this is an article that I wrote, just kind of prefacing this podcast here, the limitations of operant conditioning in animal training. The documentary Blackfish brings to light significant issues regarding the use of operant conditioning and the training of killer whales. These insights offer a valuable perspective that extend beyond marine mammals to encompass the training of dogs and other animals. Operant conditioning, which is dog training, while a widely used method in animal training, often fails to meet the enrichment needs of complex, intelligent animals such as whales and dogs. Additionally, it poses dangers when animals are kept in a conditioned state to earn their food in captivity. Understanding operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is a learning process through which behaviors are modified by consequences. Positive reinforcement, a key component of operant conditioning, involves rewarding a desired behavior to increase the likelihood of its reoccurrence. While this method can effectively teach animals specific behaviors, it often overlooks the broader needs for mental and emotional enrichment. The need for enrichment. Both whales and dogs are highly intelligent and social animals that require diverse forms of stimulation to maintain their mental health. In Blackfish, the documentary, the lack of adequate environmental enrichment for captive orcas leads to severe psychological stress and abnormal behaviors. Even dogs have behavioral issues. Similarly, dogs in training programs that rely solely on operant conditioning without sufficient enrichment can develop behavioral problems. Enrichment goes beyond basic training and involves providing animals with activities that stimulate their natural instincts, encourage exploration, and promote social interactions. For whales, this might include larger, more dynamic environments and opportunities for social bonds. For dogs, it means incorporating play, socialization, problem-solving activities in their daily routines. Dangers of conditioned state for food. In captivity, both whales and dogs are often trained to perform tasks in exchange for food. This practice can lead to several negative consequences. One, dependency and stress. Animals may become overly dependent on food rewards, leading to stress when these rewards are not provided consistently. This dependency can manifest as anxiety and aggressive behavior, which is on the rise right now in this dog training industry. Two, lack of autonomy, which is independent thought. Conditioning animals to earn their food limits their autonomy and ability to express natural behaviors freely. This lack of control over their environment can lead to frustration and psychological distress, another common thing in the dog industry. 3, health issues. Constantly conditioning animals with food rewards can also result in overfeeding or nutritional imbalances, contributing to health issues such as obesity. Real-world implications. The issues highlighted in the documentary Blackfish with Tilcom's aggression and psychological breakdown are stark examples of the dangers inherent in operant conditioning without adequate enrichment. The film shows Tilcom kept in a conditioned state to earn food and perform, developed extreme stress and aggression, ultimately leading to tragic outcomes, killing the trainers or biting the trainers or drowning them. In the dog training industry, similar patterns can be observed. Dogs subjected to training regimens that rely heavily on food rewards without adequate mental and physical enrichment may exhibit signs of stress, anxiety, and behavioral issues. Trainers and owners must recognize the importance of holistic approaches that consider an animal's overall well-being. Now, this is where you and me step in, moving towards holistic training methods, which is where people should reach out to you and I. To address these issues, both marine parks and dog trainers should adopt more holistic training methods that prioritize the animal's mental and emotional health. This involves 1, enhanced enrichment programs, such as what you offer, implementing diverse enrichment programs that cater to the animal's natural instincts and social needs. For whales, this could mean larger habitats and social groupings. For dogs, incorporating varied activities like scent work. Interactive play can provide essential mental stimulation. Doesn't have to be training. 2, reducing dependency on food rewards, utilizing a variety of reinforcement strategies, including social rewards, play, and environmental enrichment to reduce reliance on food rewards and promote more healthier behaviors. And 3, providing autonomy, which is what you and I do, is we allow the dogs to make safe choices. Allowing animals more control over their environment and the ability to make choices can significantly improve their psychological well-being. And this could involve creating more naturalistic settings and offering opportunities for animals to engage in self-directed activities. In conclusion, Blackfish underscores the critical need to move beyond operant conditioning as the sole method for animal training. By recognizing the limitations of the approach and the dangers it poses, trainers and caretakers, notice it didn't say owners,
Okay. Owners.
Caretakers can develop more humane and effective practices in ensuring that animals like whales and dogs receive the enrichment they need, and reducing their dependency on conditioned food rewards is essential for their mental and their physical well-being. Embracing holistic training methods can lead to healthier, happier animals and prevent the tragic outcomes that arise from inadequate care and understanding. So for those that are watching this podcast, if you want to learn a different approach, a more behavioral approach, a more cognitive emotion approach, which is current science right now. Current science doesn't use operant conditioning for human behavior. We're using cognitive emotion for human behavior. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to tony-nila.com as my website. And then Sasha, how do we get a hold of you?
pureloveandharmony.com.
So if you guys are watching this and you want to learn, well, then how would you, Sasha, raise your dog? How would you, Tony, do this? If I could start over and get a puppy, let us show you how to do it. And we'll show you. You'll be so surprised that you can have a good dog without training.
Yep.
Without having to use cookies.
Without using cookies, especially, and without using like a force, especially that one. And I'm kind of like So you have these trainers. I saw them, and maybe we can discuss that the next podcast about how someone still can try to force the force, kind of like, because they call this new movement of the behavior, like cognitive behavior movement. They call it like a new woke world. And then they want to stick to the old ways of how do we treat dogs, and how how do we train dogs with the choke collars and prong collars and e-collars and all kind of forces that creates literally and long-lasting negative effects left on the canine and the dog physiology that gonna sooner or later uh, collapse like a uh, uh, castle of cards, unfortunately, and there is always price to pay, and we can see that in the numbers of the uh, diseases that are actually becoming like a new normal to a dog life. Like, I don't know I barely know a dog that dies of old age. I know the dogs left and right that are put down because they are sick and they cannot die forever. They are dying like in agonies and in this disease here or that diseases. And the biggest responsibility for that is on us. We have all the tools and power to choose right for them. The question just becomes like, why we are not doing that? And it's nothing to do with the wishes or wills. It's only education and learning about how the tools we have can be, I mean, tools, knowledge can be used in order to prevent that agony that becomes like normal to a dog's final stages or hours of life.
And if anybody watching wants to, here's the interesting thing too. It's I feel that you and me have a pretty good approach with raising dogs, and I don't want to necessarily say that I don't. It's not that I don't like dog trainers. I mean, I used to be a dog trainer. Sometimes I might have to fall back on some of it sometimes, but I'm not saying that we don't like dog training or dog trainers. But what I'm saying is, even the dog
I don't
now
you can like, I don't like them anymore.
Yeah, but even the dog trainers. But well, the reason why is because I have to point myself at some point. You have to point to yourself at some point because you were at a point where you did something wrong that now you regret and now you're learning. So I don't hate dog trainers because I know that I was there, I was evolving. But this is the interesting thing. When I look at dog trainers, I do see that they know they're missing something. They're starting to become self-aware. They're still dog trainers, but they're being self-aware that something is missing. Nobody wants to have to constantly reinforce your dog for the rest of its life for 15 years. So they know they're missing something, but they don't know what they're missing, and we're willing to teach it. But the other thing also too is there are other people out there that do cognitive training, right? And so when you research other people that are saying, oh, I'm not a trainer, I do natural, holistic, or cognitive type work, the thing that you'll notice is it's not necessarily a very understood thing with dog trainers, even though they're experimenting with it. So I've gone to a lot of websites where there's a dog trainer that says, I have a cognitive approach. And the first thing I see is a food reward.
Positive reinforcement.
And then I'll go, oh, I loved the verbiage. I loved how they sold it. I love that they're experimenting with a cognitive approach, but they're still conditioning. So if you are a trainer, if you do want to know more about cognitive learning and you want to develop that evolvement or understand it more, then we are an open book. So yes, if you're a trainer, we can talk. Yes, if you want to learn more about cognitive behavior, we can talk. Just contact us.
There you go. That's you're so kind. Like I maybe that's cultural difference. Like I'm tough little boy from Serbia. That I guess like it comes with the region in which you are raised, and I cannot. I'm entire my life my poodles were the signature. So I'm here like grooming dogs, and everything looks like so superficial and so like magicy and dusty. and fluffy. How could I say? But yeah, I'm literally kind of like more and more and more. I see how many
this information, right? We don't want to just sit here on the podcast and go, "Oh, we know how to do this, and we raise it this way, and we don't agree with it." It's going to come to a point where we need to tell people how to do this.
No, I guess I agree with that, but it's kind of like it's a work on our it's a very once you evolve, because we met, two of us met because we approached the same point from two different places, right? But once you evolve, evolution is source of
and a traditional trainer, Vladi, bless his heart. Vladi's watching. Peace, brother. Love you. A doctor is who introduced us to begin with.
Yeah. So there you go. Like, that was interesting. And then yet what I wanted to say here is like, when you evolve in this by asking questions and, oh, this doesn't work, what can I do? Naturally, you're going to come to the point in which we met at that point where you said like, this all now does make sense. And this is where you actually create an environment in which dog willingly choose to follow you. How can you be better? But then it's not only you that you become not only that we become a good pet parents, rightful pet parents, we become with that better humans. Once you know to provide to the dog what they really need, then you can provide to your brother, to your sister, to your child, to your father, to your mother, to your business partner and a colleague. Like this cognitive understanding of the human canine interaction can create a better world in between the humans. And that's where I think like all of these, but when it's learned, when the people are learning this, it's a completely different set of what's going on in the mind. So I oftentimes
everything that you would do instinctually that you shouldn't.
Yeah. So there what I'm saying. Oftentimes I have here with the students in a class, like I would tell the lecture and then we would go over and you would see someone sitting in a corner, on the end, and he would say like, okay. And I said like, is there any question, any comments? Please like share, how do you feel and everything. And he raises a question. He said like, I feel actually very, very, very anxious because I didn't know this, what you are telling me now, and I feel responsible. I feel also very anxious about that, and I feel exposed. I feel judged. I feel, and I must say I don't feel nice because now I see how many things I did wrong. And now I see how much work there is to be done in order for me to recreate my mindset and to be in peace with the information you are telling me here. So sometimes it can be a very challenging place to be when you expose yourself to a new knowledge that will challenge your beliefs at the present system. Your body, your brain, your conditioning gonna want you to stay in that state.
Yeah, just so you know too, and I'm just trying to be transparent with everybody. I've just really started this cognitive movement with myself, like 8 years ago when I met my mentor, and we were talking about it and deep diving on it, and he was kind of helping nurture me in the right direction. But even myself, I'm not claiming that I'm the expert on cognitive learning and latent learning, but it is definitely going to be the direction I think all of us need to be in this industry. And the only way we're going to evolve better is that we have to talk about it. I mean, I met you and you don't believe in any operant conditioning. You're not even a dog trainer. So your experience is super valid because you've been raising dogs and you don't train them. I know that there may be others out there, and we're just not mainstream right now. So there may be others out there. So if there are others out there, ask yourself, do I use food or tools in my training, or do I try to control and manage situations? If you say, I don't do any of that, then you need to reach out to us.
You are part of the pack already. Like we didn't know for each other until we didn't met. And then I was a guest on the Vlad's interview on podcast, right? And next thing I know, there is Tony getting in touch with me because he heard and he said, let's discuss this little more. And look what amazing relationship turned to be.
There's other out there comments because you and me can do interviews with people as well that have the same understanding, the same belief.
I always look for the new guests, and I will for the new partnerships and new relationships. We need to get this word spread, because the dogs lives literally depend on us changing the paradigm on this topic.
Speaking of
You really.
Is there any comments on this podcast as we're talking? Has anybody made any comments or asked any questions as of yet?
I can tell you that because Vedran is not in our room, and I don't know what he's. I'm not watching. I'm watching this on the camera, so I don't know. I'm watching this on this platform out from which they're streamed. So I guess like Vedran gonna what? Oh, I'm a dog trainer.
Nothing. One time you were a dog trainer, shocking. And then one was, that's so sad. But these are from before. They causes psychosis. OMG. Yes, we need more men like you too.
The Veteran is our moderator. He's
a moderator, but he's far away from there. So there is a good comments and nice, I guess, like nice comments. I don't know, are they? So yeah, because this is something that dogs should actually, that's something I think like a dog training should be like a. We don't need to train animals to do nothing. We need to find a way to live.
Let me ask you this, Sasha. Just before we sign off, and I know we're going over, and maybe we'll add this as a separate thing on the next, maybe a podcast, or we'll keep adding to the subjects of the podcast. And maybe this is a good subject that maybe we might have a group chat with other trainers about. Do you feel that the pet industry, the dog training industry, should be regulated, not by other dog training organizations, because it's all political and they have their own agenda, but do you think the state, do you think that the government needs to step in and say, okay, you guys, it's almost like a parent, you guys are not knowing how to take care of your animals. Do you think that the government needs to step in and regulate the education that trainers have before they can call themselves a trainer? I'm really curious what your thoughts are on that.
I must tell you, I'm coming from the socialist country, and when you tell me something like that, I get like my hair goes like this. Wherever you want, why the government will regulate anything that can be I'm more for the movement, right? From inside self-movement of the responsible ownership. The moment you put a regulation on something, there is a corruption in place immediately. There is some body, there is some structure, there is some rules. And then soon the rules start to be implemented in the things. I think like this should become a movement of the doggy parent responsibilities. The less we can have in a government, they let them do their thing and stuff and collect whatever they are collecting, how you call it, taxes and whatever they are doing.
Holistic medicine movement, and then you have the doctors that go to the university to prescribe drugs. So I guess they don't regulate.
There you go. That's a wonderful answer to the question. Like last week, I was always kind of on the beginning. Everything should be regulated, but then actually as longer I live in the States, like full-time American, if I can say so. More I see this benefit of the movement of the freedom within. That's actually we are able to create a movement that's going to be self-regulated organism, rather than have a government come in and step in and start making rules and certifications. And we are again getting back to the point of what we are actually against at this point, right? We want to create a mainstream of this, but some healthy system that's going to build up themselves. As we said, like this is a dog podcast for the people. So this should be a dog's movement of the evolution of the dog's relationship with the humans. And I think this is more in service to a dogs through the humans than humans should, organize themselves. Then the humans should organize this by some laws and rules that actually proven doesn't work. So talking to a socialist guy raised in socialist country, the moment you mention government, I have like, okay, let them have them far away. Yeah, I don't know. I have this is a order and a system and democracy, and it should have like a system as is, right? But I personally, the moment we start to regulate such a profound evolutionary relationship with an animals, I think we are putting a chain on that evolution itself.
Let it
I'm
evolve,
sorry.
not by force.
Yeah, I think like that should be an inner movement of the people wanting to change rather than and then the forever evolution of that would be much easier if there is no structure around it.
Yeah, I believe I like that perspective. That's not a perspective. That's not a perspective that I have actually, but I actually am leaning more towards what you're saying. I think that you're correct in that aspect, and I think that will actually change my perception on how I feel about regulation now. So I'm really glad to hear your perspective because I think you're giving me something to think about as well. So, all right, man. Hey, I'll see you at the next podcast. I guess
thank you so much, actually, for I will thank you so much for being such a dedicated nerd on a homework about the Blackfish. I was not as much as you did, and I'm so glad you did because you nailed it down to a point. And thank you so much for your wonderful show again. And it was like co-hosting it with you was an amazing experience again. I can't wait for the next Wednesday. And until then, I'll give a big hug to you and to everyone watching us, and invite all of you back on Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time to another episode.
Not 7:30 exactly, just hang tight. Sometimes we have technical difficulties, and we're gonna be on, so just hang tight. It's not gonna start at 7:30, but it will. We're gonna get started. We do it every Wednesday.
It's alive.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody.